New York City, the city that never sleeps. A city built by dreamers, politicians, and gangsters. For more than a century, organized crime operated in the shadows. Secret meetings, violent betrayals, millions of dollars, and power beyond imagination. From Lucky Luciano to John Gotti. From the streets of Brooklyn to the casinos of Las Vegas. Stories are real. The legends are larger than life. This is Mob Talk Radio. This started kind of one way and melded into something else. So, I wanted to do something a little different. All the time in this show, people seem to ask, a lot about movies, TV shows, and more. And, Chris Gorky and I argue about mob films all the time, right? And while this may not be the most exciting fucking topic, it's one that we're sort of going to do in traditional MTR fashion. Not only are we going to give you the best shows, the best scenes, the best movies as it relates. And next week we'll do this too. So I don't want you to think that because this ends after one that we won't do it next week. But while some of you may totally disagree that this is not going to be a full dissertation on mob culture via a lens, I'm simply going to mention a couple of movies. Well, in this part of the show, one really, a few scenes that bring you as close as I can to the mob life. Some films you might think of, may not be on this list. And a lot of that is more or less because I'm not going to sit here and go through every organized crime film ever made. So with that, the one film I do want to talk about before we can get into The Sopranos is The Godfather 2. And while some love this film and some don't, it's about as close as all three films come to showcasing maybe a segment of that life, being realistic. And the synopsis of The Godfather 2 is pretty much the following. In 1901, a 9-year-old Vito Andolini escapes from Corleone, Sicily, in the Kingdom of Italy to New York City after a Mafia chieftain, Don Ciccio, kills the rest of his family. An immigration officer registers him as Vito Corleone. By 1917, Vito is married in Little Italy and has an infant son, Sonny. Blackhand extortionist Don Fanucci preys on the neighborhood, costing Vito his groceries to a job. He begins stealing for a living with his neighbor Peter Clemenza, and has two more children, Fredo and Michael. Vito Clemenza and Salvatore Tessio steal stolen dresses door to door. Fanucci demands payoffs of $200 from Vito and his partners. Vito doubts Fanucci's muscle and decides to offer less. He meets with Fanucci and offers $100, which Fanucci grudgingly accepts. Emboldened, Vito tracks down Fanucci back to his apartment and kills him. Vito's reputation spreads, and the neighbors ask him to defend them from other predatory figures. In 1922, Vito and his family travel to Sicily to start an olive oil importing business. He and business partner Don Tomasino visit an elderly Don Ciccio. He obtains Ciccio's blessing for their business and then reveals his identity and slices Ciccio's stomach, avenging the Andolini family. And the reason why I'm focusing on that is because of the character of Don Fanucci. Don Fanucci's character was based, actually, believe it or not, on Ignazio Lupo, or Lupo the Wolf, who we've talked about repeatedly on this show. And while the character was based, they say, on Ignazio Lupo, one of the traits that Mario Puzo took was really that of Joe Masseria and Salvatore Maranzano. Don Fanucci is a local blackhand chieftain, and Fanucci, however, was just a neighborhood thug with some power because of his boss, Maranzano. Maranzano. Sound familiar? There you go. Fanucci represents Masseria and Maranzano more than, say, Ignazio Lupo. Lupo was a brute only when he needed to be, and he wasn't nearly as greedy as Masseria or Maranzano, and Fanucci was cut basically from the same cloth. And so the background is this. Fanucci controls the protection rackets for his boss, Maranzano. And we know from earlier what the scenario was. And this is a great example of Lucky Luciano, believe it or not. And if you just follow along the two pathways, it'll make sense. Vito Corleone is doing whatever he needs to do to make ends meet. And it seems initially at every turn, Fanucci overrules and gets a piece of everything. And Vito knows that. He also finds out around the way that others are refusing to pay him, and Vito is not about to put himself into a situation where everything he makes goes to one man. Vito knows Fanucci is only as strong as though he surrounds himself with, yet he surrounds himself really with nobody, and he banks on his boss's reputation for power. Vito has enough, decides to make a move on him, and this transcends right to the murders of Masseria and Maranzano. Both were bold but selfish and greedy, and in this instance, think of Vito as a young Luciano. Vito sees that he can exploit Fanucci and realizes that he truly doesn't wield nearly as much power as he thinks he does. And it's sort of the same thing that Luciano goes through. Luciano knows one man running a business all for himself isn't good for business. Times, like history, change, and if Luciano and others want to evolve, they have to take a stand, which we know is what he did completely. This is the same move Vito Corleone makes. It's one of the more non-objectionable, close to the vest scenes in all of the Godfather films. And Vito made his decision based on his suspicion that Fanucci wasn't shit, but a selfish brute. And he would be right. So when you talk about things, you talk about power grabbing, right? So you just can't kill a guy and expect everything to settle down. And think about the risk that Luciano took. Imagine if nobody was on board. Or imagine if nobody who was actually on board with Luciano truly wasn't. I mean, if Lucchese says no, Bonanno says no, others say no, Luciano's dead before he fucking hits the streets. And if you're going to grab power, you have to have a plan for that afterwards. Otherwise, you're dead off Jump Street. And the amount of pre-planning and risk-taking should actually be noted. The way the streets gossip alone should have gotten Luciano caught somehow. I mean, look, they had an entire conclave without two bosses. And how did they figure that the bosses would never hear about that? Maybe they did and just never suspected Luciano had the type of balls. And it shows more to their ignorance and their bravado than it does prowess. And that's what separates the men from the boys. And this is exactly why I point you to that particular scene, the murder of Don Fanucci in The Godfather 2. And it's time period correct. It's protocol correct. Because alone in our, just look at the series about Philadelphia. We spoke about the Black Hand, their beginnings, and they just were not totally organized like the Cosa Nostra is today. And that's exactly why Vito Corleone can push and not worry too much. And so after Fanucci's murder, Vito takes over for himself, almost pre-Mafia. Fanucci was killed for the same reasons why Maranzano and Masseria got killed. It was the same mechanism. So on my list, for the first time period piece and accuracy, The Godfather 2, The Death of Fanucci is at the top of my list. And second for me, anytime I say accurate, it doesn't necessarily mean exact to the point. With films, the ones that work, they bring you a set of facts and warp it a bit for the viewer's tastes. If you look at the 1990-91 film Gotti, for me that comes in second. It's not based on utter facts because, as you know, that first Gotti film was riddled with lies and innuendo, but it works. And so the question is why? Why did that work? And the problem is, with making any Gotti film, and I've said this to Angel, John Gotti Jr., and other people, you cannot make one film about the guy in under 3 hours. You just can't do it. And too many of these films about John Gotti confuse people. If you're going to do a true Gotti film, an accurate one, it has to start where he's in street gangs as a teenager. Then you show the abuse he suffered as a child at the hand of his parents. Everything morphed John into John. And for me, climbing the ladder, showing him learning, driving, watching, that's the story. How does he become this man? And the story of how John became John and the downfall that comes with all of that. And it's a tragic story. No matter how you want to weave it, it's still a tragedy. It's a Greek tragedy. How one man goes from bottom zero to city hero. That's the story. The good, bad, and the ugly have to be shown. And the HBO film works so well because it was casted correctly. And it was as accurate as it gets, as certain protocol and history. But most love the film because it's a straight gangster film. And this is one of the reasons why the last two De Niro mob films flopped. Number one, De Niro playing an Irish guy makes no fucking sense. Secondly, the film was 2 hours too long. Third, they didn't give the audience anything. Why didn't we see Jimmy Hoffa's backstory a bit more? Why didn't they dive into the Kennedy shit, the Kefauver hearings, turmoil in South Philadelphia? That was the story of Frank Sheeran, regardless of whether or not we believe Frank and the totality of what he said when he was alive. But there's so much they could have done that they failed to do. Same thing with the Travolta Gotti movie, where people got confused, is the time warps back and forth between the John Gotti Jr. storyline. Hollywood just fucks it all up because they want sugar and caffeine but deliver Diet Coke and stale nachos most of the time. So the HBO version of Gotti succeeded because they kept it simple. Very simple. Beginning, middle, and end. And the cast was great. They could have killed hookers for 2 fucking hours and I'd be all in. And the mob protocol in that film was pretty accurate. John's thoughts were close considering the story that we do know. And Armand Assante was the best Gotti you're ever going to see on film. Perhaps, however, when we talk about mob films, The Sopranos comes to mind. We've talked about the TV show a million times. And like I said, I've recently started to watch the show again back to back. And I did miss some cues from certain episodes that I didn't remember, like I said. And I found myself almost saying, where the fuck is the mob shit? I see Carmela try to fuck the priest one more time, I'm turning this shit off. Or I'm going to see that little metal complain one more time, I'm making her take coke bumps just to get her out of my way. And there's a lot to like, and there's a lot not to like. And there's more to snub than I ever thought before. And the mere fact that Junior tried to have Tony killed and Tony really does nothing goes against everything. And the streets, they would have been lit on fire for that type of shit. And sure, going against the grain and not killing Junior worked. But it's just not true to the streets. So when I look back, I don't think much was accurate in terms of the streets. Some was, and we've talked about the dialogue and some of the actions, and I've always said that that's the closest version you're ever going to get. Yes, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily accurate. And the inner politics of New York and New Jersey is something that I found, interesting to see going back and looking at it. The politicking you see between Tony and Johnny Sack was pretty close to the vest. Politicking is everything in the streets, but at times Jersey just seems too small, not strong enough, as if they were a subsection of South Philadelphia. And why that's okay is because that's how New York always felt about Jersey guys in general. So they got that right on that front. But if you go back, we didn't get a lot of exposition about The Sopranos, a line or two about the past. So what I wanted to do today was a deep dive on The Sopranos that you might not have known. And here is what we know, and you're not going to get this anywhere else. Sopranos 101. The Sopranos' real crime family name was the DiMeo crime family, which was established in the 1900s by a man by the name of Alfano in northern New Jersey. During World War II, the DiMeos were tasked by the U.S. Navy to protect the ports in Brooklyn. Sound familiar? It should, because historically the Mafia protected the ports in return for Luciano's early release. Ercole DiMeo, who was the boss beginning in the 1950s. Key family members from that time period would have been Johnny Soprano, Corrado Soprano, Feach Lamanna, Raymond Curto, Dicky Moltisanti, Paulie Gualtieri, and Aldo Moltisanti. Johnny Soprano was a captain within the DiMeos, and the Soprano faction of that family included the names that we just mentioned. So in essence, we're actually just following the history of sort of one crew. Johnny Soprano effectively was the North Jersey street boss and ran day-to-day operations for Ercole DiMeo. Yet in the series, they never really explained who Tony's dad was in relation to rank and file. In 1967, the New York race riots hit, and both Junior and Johnny Soprano would get pinched. Junior would skate those out on bail, and Johnny would be sent upriver for 4 years. And in his absence, all hell breaks loose. Dicky Moltisanti, Christopher's grandfather, clipped his own son, Dicky Jr., as a result of his heavy-handed ways with Jeppesina. In 1972, there would be a numbers racket war in New Jersey. As Johnny Soprano exits prison, a black gangster by the name of Harold McBrayer had begun to move into the numbers racket and began absorbing places in Newark. That racket was controlled by Christopher's father, Dicky Moltisanti. Dicky had previously been promoted to captain. And after Harold killed one of Dicky's men, Dicky and his crew broke into his car shop, killed his cousin Cyril. As payback, Harold would attack Dicky, Johnny, and Buddha outside of their nightclub. Killing Buddha, Dicky and the crew then went on to look out for Harold. Tension began to boil over when Dicky and Junior, due to Dicky's constant undermining him and Johnny comparing him to Dicky. Eventually, the Christmas season of that year, Dicky was killed by an unknown hitman sent by Junior Soprano. Dicky's crew, and if we know that, you almost have to ask that episode where Tony tells Christopher that he found his father's killer and this and that and the third. He doesn't tell him that Junior set it up. So it's interesting. Dicky's crew then merges back with the Soprano crew. No one knew that Junior ordered Dicky's murder, with the largely accepted rumor being that it was done by a corrupt cop under orders from Dicky's rivals, Jilly Ruffalo. Unrest of 1983. During the 80s, many DiMeo crew family members and associates were arrested, causing the biggest blow to the family since its formation. Among those arrested were Feach Lamanna and Tony Blundetto in 1984, who were both sentenced to 20 years, and Richie April in 89, who got 10 years. And it was during the unrest of 83 that Salvatore Big Pussy Bompancero, a cat burglar and associate in the Johnny Soprano crew, stood up and killed somebody for Johnny and became a made man as a result. During this time, Junior was promoted to captain of his own crew. The rise of Anthony Soprano in 1986. Johnny Soprano dies of emphysema in October of 86. Before his death, he requested his son become the captain of his own crew. Tony, one of the fastest rising stars in the family, becomes one of the fastest rising stars in the family after holding up Feach LaManna's card game with future April crew chief Jackie April. Was a relatively young man to be a captain at the time at the age of 27. Tony's transition into captain was aided by the loyalty of longtime Soprano soldiers Paulie Gualtieri, Silvio Dante, and Pussy Bompensero. Tony would go on to become one of the top earners in that family. 1995, April ascends to acting boss. DiMeo was convicted and given a life sentence in prison in 1995. Jackie was named boss of the family, much to the anger of Junior Soprano. It was assumed that a Soprano would take over the reins when DiMeo died or went to prison, but DiMeo was impressed by Jackie April's leadership abilities. The April crew had been a top earner and best-run crew of the family for years. Jackie was the official boss of the family, but he chose the title of acting boss out of respect to old man DiMeo, but it could also have been to fool the feds into thinking that DiMeo was still running the family behind bars. So let's look at the rank and file, and this is from the 1900s to the late 50s. Boss, Alfano, members and associates, captain or underboss, Ercole Boot DiMeo, soldier captain Tommy Pinto, soldier Giovanni Johnny Boy Soprano, soldier Feach LaManna, soldier Lino Buddha Bompensero, soldier Carmine Cotuso, soldier Calogero Butch Dante, murdered in 59, soldier unnamed man murdered by Sally Moltisanti, associate Junior Soprano, associate Aldo Hollywood Dick Moltisanti, associate Salvatore Sally Moltisanti, formerly incarcerated. 67 through 72, boss Ercole Boot DiMeo, underboss nobody knew, consigliere nobody knew. These were the crews. The Soprano crew, which was led by Johnny Soprano. The Moltisanti crew, run by Richard Dicky Moltisanti, who's murdered in 72. The LaManna crew, headed by Feach LaManna. The Curto crew, led by Raymond Buffalo Ray Curto. Known soldiers and associates in that crew. Soldier, Fat Jerry Anastasia. These are all soldiers unless I say otherwise. Tommy Gallardi, Tommy Pinto, Corrado Jr. Soprano, Lino Buddha Bompensero, Pat Blundetto, Paulie Walnuts Gualtieri, Silvio Dante, Carmine Cotuso, Kevin Hare Sharkey, Romeo Martin, unnamed man, Sposato brothers, Anthony Bello, Angelo Salerno, Jimmy, Frank Napoli, two unnamed men, Mickey Pinto, Fabian Febi Petrulio, Carlo Gervasi, unnamed hitman Rocco DiMeo, Herman Hesh Rabkin is an associate, Salvatore Bompensero, associate, Aldo Hollywood Dick Moltisanti, associate, Richie April, associate, Harold McBrayer, associate, Cousin Cyril, associate, Joel De Rogatis, associate, Chicky Sasso, associate, Rocco Altori, associate, The Cowboy, associate, Vic Caputo, associate, Damiano, associates, three unnamed men or associates, Frankie the guitarist, associate, Bishop, associate, businesses, Satriali's Pork Store, Barone Sanitation, Club Silhouette, Vulcan Vending Machine Company, Attaboy Drainage Supply, burned down in 67, Ragland Amusement Park, raided by police in 67, Julius's Candy Store, taken over by the Black Panthers in 1972. And this right here is the administration pre-1998. Boss, Ercole Boot DiMeo, imprisoned for life in 95. Acting boss, Jackie April. Underboss, unknown. Consigliere, unknown. Captains, the Soprano crew, led by Johnny Boy Soprano, Tony Soprano. Junior Sopranos crew, Corrado Jr. Soprano being the leader of that crew. Then you have the April crew, Richie April, imprisoned in 89. Jackie April, 89 and 95. The Barisi crew, Lorenzo Larry Boy Barisi. The Altieri crew, headed by Jimmy Altieri, the Curto crew, Raymond Buffalo Curto, the LaManna crew, possibly defunct, Feach LaManna, who's imprisoned in 84. The DiMeo Soprano family organization from 98 to 2007. Ercole DiMeo, boss, incarcerated. Acting boss, Jackie April. Underboss, Joe Sasso. Then you had crews. You had the Soprano crew, the Corrado crew, the Aprile crew, the Altieri crew, the Barisi crew, and the Curto crew. And what's interesting is 1, 2, 3. So that's 6 crews. Now, if you think about when you go back and watch The Sopranos, did you know there were 6 crews? I just don't think that they did a very good job explaining that. All right. All right, so this is the DiMeo family structure during the series, 98 to 99. Official boss, Junior Soprano. Consigliere, Mikey Palmisi. Underboss, Joe Sasso, which I couldn't even tell you who the fuck Joe Sasso was. The de facto boss, Tony Soprano. De facto consigliere, Silvio Dante. Now they're reduced to 4 crews. No, 6, excuse me. Soprano crew, Corrado crew, April crew, Altieri crew, Barisi crew, and Curto crew. From 99 to 2000, the administration. Junior Soprano is the boss. Street boss, Tony Soprano. Consigliere, Silvio Dante. These are the crews. Galtieri crew. Junior Corrado crew. April crew. Gervasi crew. Barisi crew. Curto crew. 2000 to 2003. Official boss, Junior Soprano. Street boss, Tony Soprano. Consigliere, Silvio Dante. Galtieri crew. Junior Corrado crew. The Ralphie Cifaretto crew, the Gervasi crew, the Baresi crew, and the Curto crew. So it looks like they maintained 6 crews for the duration of the show, but we'll see. 2004 to 2006, the official boss was Junior Soprano. The street boss, Tony Soprano. The consigliere, Silvio Dante. The underboss, Paulie Galtieri, which I didn't know he ever held that rank. That's news to me. And these were the crews. The junior crew, Junior Corrado. The Vito Spadafori crew. The Gervasi crew. The Lumana crew, the Curto crew, the Barisi crew. From 06 to 07, the boss, Tony Soprano. Consigliere, Silvio Dante. Underboss, Paulie Galtieri. And these were the crews, the Multisanti crew, the junior crew, which was then defunct, the Spadafori crew, Gervasi crew, Barisi crew, Curto crew, and Lamano crew. Summer of 2007, boss, Tony Soprano. Consigliere, Silvio Dante. Underboss, Bobby Baccalieri, killed in 2007. The Multisanti crew, defunct. The Spadafori crew, defunct. The Gervasi crew, Barisi crew, Curto crew. So now they're reduced to 3 crews. As of the fall and autumn of 07, the boss, Tony Soprano. Consigliere, Silvio Dante, who was comatose. Underboss, Paulie Galtieri. Captains. Now they only have 3 captains. Patsy Parisi, Albert Barisi, and Anthony Maffei. Crews, the Galtieri crew, the Maffei crew, the Barisi crew, and the Curto crew. So here's what we have for known soldiers and associates from 1980 to 85. And these are all going to be soldiers and associates. Benny Fazio, Walden Belfiore, Dante Greco, Peter LaRosa, Frankie Cortez, Gary DiBartolo, Beppe Serbo, Tommy DiPalma, Nicholas Bagnelli, George Esposito, Frank Cipollina, Vincent Pisatoro, Terry Doria, Kevin Sharkey, Paulie Germani, Max Pellegrino, Barisi Soldier, Social Club Bartender, Joe Samarco, Dave Salerno, Donald Cafranza, Jason Molinaro, Kevin Interdonato, 10 unnamed men, 4 unnamed men, 5 unnamed men, Herman Rabkin, John Stefano, Angie Bompancero, James Zaccone, Perry Annunziata, Corky Corporale, Corky Di Genovese, Corky Lanucci, Brian Spatafor, Sammy Grigo, Ahmed and Mohammed, Hillel Titleman, Thomas Macarato, Bobby Zanone, Joe Marino, Alfie Goduti, Fritzy, Jay, Joe Flies, Joe DeRuffa, Spatafore Renovators, Yo-Yo Mendez, Warren Dupree, Quebecois, Pharmacist, 10 to 15 unnamed men, unnamed contact, unnamed lawyer, unnamed cop. And so, when you look at the Sopranos, their family has ties to the International Union of Painter and Allied Trades, the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, United Steelworkers, United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America, New York City District Council of Carpenters, Operative Plasterers and Cement Masons International Union, the Laborers International Union of North America, Service Employees International Union, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the United Union of Roofers, Waterproofers and Allied Workers, United Food and Commercial Workers, the International Association of Heat and Frost Insulators and Allied Workers, Laborers International Union of North America, International Longshore and Warehouse Union, International Brotherhood of Teamsters, and the United Association of the International Union of Operating Engineers. They also have ties to the Associated Builders and Contractors Trade Association, the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, New York City Housing Authority, the United States Department of Labor and Occupational Safety, Hazard and Health Administration, the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, and the New Jersey State Police, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and the United States Environmental Protection Agency. I bet you guys didn't know all that. So this just shows you the depth they went as far as, sort of looking at, traditional mob rackets. So it's interesting to me. So here are all the crews. In this form, the Soprano, Gualtieri, Moltisanti crew, formerly known as the Soprano crew. It's now known as the Gualtieri crew. Paulie Gualtieri becomes the captain of his crew circa 1950s to October of 86. John Francis Johnny Boy Soprano dies of emphysema in October of 86. From 86 to 99, Anthony John Tony Soprano takes over. The traditional and primary income of that crew stems from bookmaking, loan sharking, and extortion, as well as truck hijacking. Under the ascension of Tony Soprano to acting boss, a more diverse and modern criminal enterprises sort of get pursued. Those include HMO scams with Hesh Rabkin and the pump and dump Wabistics stock scam, buying and selling cars on credit through front companies and selling them at a discount and selling stolen credit cards and card numbers. The Soprano crew is the main proprietors of the Bada Bing Strip Club, Route 17 in Lodi in New Jersey. Silvio Dante officially owns and manages that club. Business has also been established through Satriali's pork store, a meat market in the North Ward. That was left to Johnny Soprano when Old Man Satriali, a compulsive gambler and debtor, committed suicide in the 70s. Tony also owned the building that housed Caputo's poultry store in the North Ward before selling the property to Jamba Juice in 2006. Garbage routes were also considered bread and butter for the crew as of 1998. And up until its sale in 2006, Barone Sanitation acted as a lucrative and protective front business and handled their garbage hauling routes, which included the Triborough Towers. Tony Soprano was a longtime paid consultant of Barone Sanitation until Jason Barone sold the company after his father Dick Barone's death. Tony still receives his salary from that company. Until 2016, he netted 12% of the sale price. Tony and Silvio Dante also run the Executive Card Game, a high-stakes poker game once run by Johnny and Junior Soprano until Tony took over. So let's look at the Junior Soprano Bacagliari crew. The crew was formerly known as Junior Soprano's crew, then became the Bacagliari crew. And it's unknown, really. There's some things that are unknown, but circa late to the 1970s to 98, Junior Soprano then gets promoted to boss. Acting boss 1998, Mikey Palmisi, murdered in 99. Acting 1999, Philly Spoons Parisi, murdered in August of 99. Acting from 99 2002, a guy by the name of Murph Lupo. And their sort of rackets were the Joint Fitters Union, Paving Union, which was given to Tony in 99, asbestos dump operation at the Goldwater Memorial Hospital. The sports books in Roseville and Bloomfield Avenue were given to Tony Soprano, and the crew kept 5% of the profits in 99, but then it gets changed to 7.5%. Shylocking racket was given to Tony Soprano, and who kept 5% of those profits in 99, and then it changes to 7.5. Cocaine trafficking is then handed to Tony, and his crew kept 5% of that action. Stolen car ring coordinated with the crime family in Naples, given to the Tony Soprano crew in 99. So formerly known as the April crew, the Sestone crew, the Cifaretto crew, and the Spadafori crew, which is now defunct. 1970s to 89, Richie April led that crew, stepped down because he was incarcerated. From 89 to 95, Jackie April became the acting boss. From 95 to 2000, Richie April takes over that crew but is murdered. In 2000, Ralph Cifaretto takes over, and then Gigi Sestone. And under the leader of Jackie April, the crew had the biggest interest in construction via illicit control of the unions and projects in cooperation with the Lupertazzi crime family. And this became the most lucrative under the leadership of Ralph Cifaretto, who supervised the New Jersey Front Esplanade construction project and the HUD scam, and his successor Vito Spadafori. This made them the most consistently profitable crew in the whole family. However, since Vito's disappearance and the subsequent death in 2006, the Gervasi crew had been granted control of all future construction interests. Ownership and operation of Spatafor Construction, Fernandez Paving, and April Roofing. In 2006, the April crew merged with the Altieri crew under the Altieri Gervasi crew. Unknown from 99, Jimmy Altieri, FBI rat. From 99 to 07, Carlo Gervasi took over that crew. former Anthony Blundetto was actually in that crew, so now we know the crew he was in before. But the Gervasi crew runs all operations around the New Jersey ports, controlling overseas shipments and business. With the death of the April crew capo Vito Spatafori in 2006, Carlo Gervasi was given control of April's construction interests, and the Gervasi crew now owns the casino. In 2007, the crew is merged with the Soprano Gualtieri crew. Baresi crew. The Baresi crew is known for its large crew of made men, although it's the biggest crew in the family. Very few members are actually seen or named on the show. Current organization, Lawrence Larry Boy Baresi, captain, unknown to present, incarcerated in September of 2007 for violating house arrest, awaiting retrial. Albert Baresi takes over as the acting capo. Former member, Rusty Irish, an associate and a drug dealer who died in 1998. A percentage of the Baresi crew profits come from drug trafficking. The Baresi crew is also involved in waste management, and in 2000 they were involved in a brief conflict with the April crew over territory, the Curto crew. And it's unknown who took over the Curto crew after the passing of its captain, Raymond Curto. Then that sort of forms into the LaManna crew, run by Feach LaManna from the 50s. Then in 1984, in 2004, then he goes to prison. And Feach LaManna used to run a high-stakes poker game, one that was famously held up by Jackie Aprile Sr. and Tony Soprano. And these are the legitimate interests included as for what they have. So, boss, Tony Soprano; consigliere, Silvio Dante; underboss, Bobby Baglieri; captains, Paulie Gualtieri, Albert Barese, Tony Maffei, Patsy Parisi; soldiers and associates, 70 to 80 soldiers, 150 associates, crews. Gualtieri crew, Baresi crew, Bagliari crew, Curto crew. Here's some historical stuff really quick. Founder was Alfano. Former bosses, Alfano, 1900s to 1950s. Ercole DiMeo, 50s to 95. Jackie Aprile, 95 to 98. Junior Soprano, 98 to 2006. Former consiglieres, Mikey Palmisi, 98 to 99. Silvio Dante, 99 to 2007. Former underbosses, Beppe Sasso, unknown until about 99. Paulie Gualtieri, 2004 to 2006. Bobby Baglieri, 2007. Former captains, Larry Baresi, Ralph Cifaretto, Raymond Curto, Bobby Bagliari, Christopher Moltisanti, Vito Spatafore, Richie Aprile, Gigi Sestone, Feach LaManna, Carlo Gervasi, Dicky Moltisanti, Junior Soprano, Johnny Soprano, Jimmy Altieri. Former crews, the LaManna crew, the Altieri Gervasi crew, the Moltisanti crew, the Aprile crew, and Dicky Moltisanti's crew. Their territory, Newark, New Jersey; Bloomfield, New Jersey; Kearney, New Jersey; Fairfield, New Jersey; Caldwell, New Jersey; Long Beach, New Jersey; Aria Ristorante in Fairfield; Jersey City, New Jersey; Brooklyn, New York; Miami, Florida. And some of their activities: auto theft, bank fraud, bid rigging, bookmaking, building violations, calling card fraud, cement violations, construction violations, credit card fraud, drug trafficking, kidnapping, extortion, identity theft, legal gambling, labor racketeering, loan sharking, mail fraud, money laundering, mortgage fraud, murder, peer and port theft, racketeering, securities fraud, truck hijacking, street tax and wire fraud, and witness tampering and jury tampering. Here's some of their fronts: the Bada Bing, the Barone Sanitation, Satriali's Pork Store, Comley Trucking, Caputo's Poultry, Crazy Horse Club, Esplanade Construction, the Aprile Social Club, Zanone Brothers Private Carding, Mancuso Insurance, Port of Newark, Spatafori Brothers Construction, Allies, 5 families in New York, Zucca Camorra family in Italy, the Russian Mafia, the Cuban Mafia, the Atwells Avenue Boys, which would have been the Patriarch of Crime family. Cuban Mafia is interesting. I don't know when the hell they did that in the show, but whatever. Their rivals, the Leotardo Crime family, the Black Panthers, the Colombian Cartel, the Vipers Motorcycle Gang, Kohler Organization, the Philadelphia Mafia, and the New England Mafia. When did they ever, to your knowledge, beef with Philadelphia? And that's my kind of thing. And that's where we're at with and next week we're going to continue this. We're going to stop for today. But that's my thing. They did all of this investing into the background, but yet didn't showcase certain things. You know, it's just odd. It's odd. They do all the background and then they don't showcase it. Listen, you could have used, especially with Philadelphia being such a proximity to New Jersey and Caldwell and North Jersey, they could have done some special shit. And why they made sort of the Atwell, why they made the Patriarch of Crime family the Atwell Avenue oldie fucks that were blind blows my fucking mind. Because in reality, I mean, if we're talking about the Cavalcanti crime family, I mean, the patriarchs at one point rivaled them, just numbers-wise. They were more powerful. So it's interesting to me to sort of look at all of that, take that all in and be like, okay, well, David Chase got some stuff right, but then he's wrong on like 90 other different levels. So that's going to be it for today's show. That's going to be it for The Sopranos Part 1. And we're going to get into like some character breakdowns next week. But do me a favor. Reach out to me at mobtalkradioshow@gmail.com. Let me know what you back to Mob Talk Radio. We are going to get into the final segment today, which is The Sopranos, I believe, week 2. Maybe it's 3 weeks. I can't remember. But it's probably going to last at least another week. All right? So last week we discussed The Sopranos and the characters, the arcs of those characters, and a little bit of background. And I truly don't want to go way too long with this series. So I think, it's probably going to be this week and maybe next week. And what we're going to discuss today is a bunch of characters, typically 3, with some background information that you might not know. And after 3 weeks or so, probably do another week of this, I want you to pay close attention because I want to do a podcast where we compare the characters to The Sopranos to real-life street guys that we've discussed. And so I think in doing this, and giving you the background, it sort of fleshes out a little better for all of you who these characters are, which enables you to sort of make a better educated comparison to an actual street guy. So I want you all to pay close attention to the backgrounds this week and next week, and we're going to come back and discuss it. Maybe we'll do a live that corresponds to these podcasts. So make some notes if you need to, because I'm going to be putting out a questionnaire on our Facebook page after next week. On our YouTube page, our Facebook page, type in Mob Talk Radio Show, and the questionnaire will be show a cast of characters. I'll put a cast of characters from the show and say, who do you think this represents from organized crime's history? So keep in mind, this will not be till next week. So make sure that you pay attention to the Facebook page. So with that, we're going to jump right in. We're going to talk first about Corrado Soprano. Corrado John Jr. Soprano Jr., obviously we know is played by the great Dominic Chianese, is a captain in the Mafia who ultimately succeeds Giacomo Jackie Aprile Sr. as the boss of the DiMeo crime family. He serves as the main antagonist of Season 1 of The Sopranos. After the death of Jackie Aprile in 1998, Jr. succeeds him as boss of the DiMeo crime family. However, shortly thereafter, a war breaks out between him and his nephew, Anthony Tony Soprano, over leadership of the family. During that conflict, Junior's enforcers are systematically eliminated by Tony before Junior is arrested by the FBI and put on trial. Despite effectively overthrowing his uncle as the family's boss, Tony allows Junior to retain the title of boss, and we know why. He pretty much did that to let Junior take all the heat. Junior lives out the remainder of his days as a powerless figurehead before gradually succumbing to dementia. Junior is the son of Corrado Soprano Sr., and Maria Angela Soprano, surname D'Agostino. Italian immigrants who came over from the town of Ariano Irpino in the province of Avellino in the Campania region of Italy in 1911. Junior had two brothers, Giovanni Francis, we knew as Johnny Boy, who was Tony's father, and Ercole, or Eckley, who was a mentally disabled and spent most of his life in an institution. Corrado Sr. was a stonemason, and Junior often accompanied his father to masonry jobs. Corrado Sr. instilled the importance of financial stability to his boys in an early age, and knowing the struggles of hardworking life their father faced, Junior and Johnny had no intention of following in his footsteps. Junior and Johnny would drop out of high school and join the DiMeo crime family in Newark together, and they were responsible for acquiring the longtime Soprano asset, Satriali's meat market, from Francis Satriali. Satriali had a gambling problem, and after a particular nasty collection that ended with the maiming of one of Satriali's hands, he eventually committed suicide, leaving the place in the Soprano brothers' hands because of those debts. Junior harbored some resentment towards his brother, who was made before he was, despite being the younger of the two. In general, Junior was known to hold grudges for any personal slights committed against him due to his deep-seated insecurities and fragile ego. Unlike his brother Johnny, who married Livia Polio and had 3 children with her, Junior never had a lasting relationship in his life and remained childless. His one serious romance in his prime was with Fran Fieldstein, which ended after he chickened out of confessing his feelings to her, with Fran entering an affair with Johnny not long after that. Junior was a doting uncle to his nephew and nieces. However, he held a lifelong distrust of his niece Janice, stemming from several childhood incidents of theft, and even what Junior later recalled as an attempt at killing him by methodically leaving the gas stove running without Junior's knowledge. Junior would become his nephew Tony's surrogate father, with Tony ultimately spending more time with Junior than his own actual father. However, prior to 1967, Tony had started becoming closer with Dickie Moltisanti, a fellow soldier in his brother's crew. So when Johnny gets sent to prison in 1967, Junior briefly takes over as acting captain of his crew. At the funeral of Aldo Hollywood Dick Moltisanti, the father of fellow soldier Richard Dickie Moltisanti, Junior takes Dickie aside and confides in him that he considers them to be brothers. He offers him his hand in friendship and promises to provide any favors that he needs. Later on, while hanging out with the crew at the club Silhouette, Junior is by himself as his girlfriend has a migraine. Dickie, accompanied by his Gumar, Jepasina, joked about her possibly cheating on him, which Junior is left feeling uncomfortable by. Harold McBrayer, who entered to speak with Dickie and Junior and Pussy, had to call off Paulie when Harold said an Italian slur. 5 years later, in 1972, Johnny Boy is released from prison and takes back the reins of his crew. Much to Junior's anger, Johnny reprimands him for apparently letting his neighborhood fall apart in his absence. Johnny urges his brother to follow Dickie's example, but this further fractures the relationship that Corrado had with Dickie. It's clear that Johnny is beginning to hold Dickie favorably to his brother, and Junior now sees Dickie as a rival and not a partner. Moltisanti's crew are later caught in a mob war with Harold over the numbers racket. Junior would attend the funeral for Lino Buddha Boppenzero, the father of Big Pussy, who was killed by McBrayer in a gang skirmish. There, he slips down the stairs of the mortuary and breaks his hip. Dickie bursts into a hysterical bout of laughter at Corrado's plight, mocking Junior as he struggles to get back onto his feet. Months later, Junior is further frustrated when his injury prevents him from having sex with his Kumar. Humiliated and enraged, Junior holds Dickie responsible. Knowing it will be blamed on Harold's crew, Junior secretly orders a hit on Moltisanti. He is shot from behind in the driveway of his home by one of Junior's men. At Moltisanti's funeral, Corrado stares coldly at his corpse, content with the knowledge that Dickie's death will never come back to him. And so we're going to move to season 1 really quick. Following the arrest of Ercole Eckley DiMeo, boss of the DiMeo crime family, in 1995, Junior gets into a trucking dispute with new acting boss Jackie Aprile Sr. He flees to Boca Raton to avoid any repercussions, but Tony arranged to sit down through the Soprano crew soldier Salvatore Big Pussy Bompensero to solve the issue. In the opening episode, Junior planned to kill Gennaro Little Pussy Malanga, not to be confused with Big Pussy, in Vesuvio, a restaurant owned by Tony's friend Arthur Artibuco. Tony tried to prevent this, eventually resorting to firebombing the restaurant to force its closure so the hit wouldn't happen there. Junior Soprano's crew often used the Sit Tight Luncheonette is their hangout, but other places they used, particularly among members of Junior's inner circle, included Harold Melvin's office, Douglas Schreck's office, and etc. Since the family's founder, Ercole DiMeo, was in prison for life, both Johnny Boy Soprano and Jackie Aprile had died. Junior eventually took over as the head of the New Jersey organization, but he was perceived as a high-handed and selfish mob guy. In other words, he ate alone, and that caused serious dissension within the ranks. Junior was very envious of others who held the advantage or position of superiority over him, especially in regards with his own family. And as we know, he had an uneasy relationship with Tony, for their often conflicting business interests, which led Junior and Tony squabbling over control of the family. As we know, Brendan Fallone, an associate at Tony's crew, was killed by Junior's right-hand man, Mikey Palmisi, over a failed truck hijacking that claimed the life of Hector Anthony, who was a driver employed by Comley Trucking. Before the situation could be elevated to war, Tony agreed to let Junior become boss. Although Junior technically became the boss, Tony had more control of the family and was using Junior as a front to distract law enforcement, with the agreement that all the other captains, all of which were unknown by Junior. So in other words, Tony had said to them, my Uncle June is the boss in name only. So Junior Soprano would gain the distrust of others when Mikey Palmisi busted up a card game under DiMeo captain Jimmy Altieri's protection, and as his first act as boss. Furthermore, Tony Soprano had to deal with the other family captains when Junior attempted to tax Hesh Rabkin and demanded a piece of his loan shark in business. Junior received $250,000 as a result, although the others believed that Junior was abusing his position. Perhaps the final straw came when Larry Barisi's top earners, Rusty Irish, who was killed by Mikey Palmisi, and Joseph Eggy Marino, another member of Junior's crew. Tony and Junior argued again when Tony made reference to Junior's sexual relationship with his longtime girlfriend Bobby, specifically his secret fondness for cunnilingus, prompting Junior to end that association. Tony also upset Junior by placing his mother Livia Soprano, widow of Junior's brother Johnny, into the Green Grove retirement community. Resentful, Livia tried to take advantage of both of their grudges and gave Junior the go-ahead to kill Tony. She prompted the action by revealing Tony's visits to Dr. Jennifer Melfi, who we know was his therapist. However, the hit failed, and Tony used the situation to cut Junior out of the loop and the family almost completely by arranging for Junior's top triggermen, Mikey Palmisi and Chucky Signore, to be killed. Junior was arrested, then would be arrested on federal racketeering charges at the time. So basically, as we know, and I'm going through different seasons just to give you a full background. Junior would end up getting his suit tailored. He asked the name of the drug dealer who sold drugs to the Taylor's grandson who had been killed. And this cut Junior's ability to pull another attack, and he sent his former crew into turmoil. Junior's underboss at the time, Beppe Sasso, was arrested at the same time as Junior. Junior's replacement captain was Philly Spoons Parisi, who couldn't keep his mouth shut about the conflict between Tony and his uncle and also Livia's involvement, and so Tony had them killed. Finally, Tony would move two soldiers from Junior's crew, Patsy Parisi, Philly's twin brother, and Gianluigi Gigi Sestone, over to his crew. This left Junior with the aging Murph Lupo as a captain and Beppe Serbo and Bobby Baccalieri as soldiers. Through Bobby, Tony informed Junior that while he could keep the title of boss, almost all of his business would be forfeited, and that Tony would only give him 5% of the tribute, which would barely be enough to live on. On Season 2 and Season 3, Junior would be released from jail and placed under house arrest while awaiting trial, after his attorney convinced the judge that Junior was much sicker than he actually was. And this mimics the real-life tactics of the Genovese crime family mob boss Vincent Gigante, who feigned mental illness to avoid federal prosecution. So that's where David Chase took that from. While he was under house arrest, Soprano Captain Richard Richie Aprile was released from prison and actively sought Junior's friendship. Soon after, Junior found himself at the epicenter of a growing power struggle between Richie and Tony, with Richie wishing to assume Tony's position as street boss. Junior was extremely conflicted over which side he should favor, but eventually decided that while Tony could be selfish and impulsive, Richie simply did not have the respect of the family members, and his violence and brutish tendencies would mean the end of the family itself. Junior would finally tell Tony of Richie's plans against him. Grateful for the warning, Tony increased by half, 5% to 7 points. So when Junior tells him of what's going on, Tony says, okay, I was paying you 5%, I'm going to give you 7.5%, and Junior's percentage of his former businesses, and the two more or less buried the hatchet between the two men. During this time, Bobby Baccalieri became Junior's replacement right-hand man and closest confidant. Bobby accompanied Junior on hospital visits during his battles with stomach cancer, which eventually he would overcome. Junior would try to warn Bobby not to get involved with his niece, Janice, and after the death of Bobby's wife, but Janice persisted, and Bobby and Janice eventually got married. So I'm giving you all of the shit here. Let's see. Junior found various ways to get around his house arrest, using his doctor's office to conduct business until the feds placed an agent there posing as a nurse and attending many funerals and family functions as possible. On season 4 and 5, although Tony considered him to be arrogant and incompetent as a boss, he often turned to Junior as the voice of experience. Look at him like Joe Agambi. Although Junior had survived cancer in prison, the toll of the series of mini strokes and the confinement of house arrests left him confused, depressed, and increasingly dependent on family care and support. Season 6, Junior's dementia had worsened over a 2-year interval as he becomes paranoid that his longtime deceased enemy, Little Pussy Malanga, is after him. Tony, however, refuses to put his uncle in a nursing home, feeling obligated to care for Junior himself with the aid of his sisters and Bobby. The decision proves nearly fatal. As we know, Tony arrives at Junior's house on that evening, finds his uncle is missing his false teeth. Tony sends Junior upstairs to look for the missing teeth while Tony prepares dinner for his uncle. When Junior hears Tony's voice from downstairs telling him that dinner is ready, his dementia kicks in once again. Junior descends the stairs and, believing his nephew to be Malanga, shoots Tony in the abdomen. Panicking, Junior runs upstairs, hiding away in the bedroom closet while Tony struggles to dial 911 before losing consciousness. Following this, the captains in the DiMeo crime family decided to cut all ties to him, making Tony the official boss of the family. Junior would be arrested and taken into federal custody over the shooting, but his lawyer secured him a release into a mental institution, claiming that he was unfit to stand trial. Tony is apparently unaware of this, having refused all contact with or even mentioning his uncle since the shooting. Junior remains confused and distressed by the proceedings and basically denies that he could have deliberately attacked his own nephew. Junior's dementia has progressed to such a state that when Anthony Jr. Soprano visits him with the intention of killing him as revenge, Jr. didn't even recognize the danger he was in. AJ was caught with a knife and arrested before Tony was able to pull strings to get him released, later saying that he was glad that AJ didn't have it in him to murder Jr. I don't want to go into the whole Jr. being in the nut ward thing. Let's see. In the episode The Blue Comet, Janet approaches Tony while he's draining his pool. She tells him that Junior has run out of money and will be removed from the Wyckoff Psychiatric Center unless somebody helps him out, with her strongly implying that Tony should step in because she and Bobby don't have the money to help him. Tony shows no sympathy at all for Junior and sarcastically offers Janice a $5 bill. Janice walks away without accepting the money, and Tony goes back to cleaning the pool. In the final episode, Made in America, Janice visits Junior at the state facility, his home since being removed from the Wyckoff facility. He calls her Livia, her mother's name. He also thinks that Janice's daughter is actually Janice. She tries to tell him that his former driver and friend Bobby is dead, but he doesn't comprehend, thinking that she means Robert Bobby Kennedy. Tony later visits a now sick, feeble Junior for the first time since the shooting. Junior recognizes him as someone he used to play catch with. Remember playing with Tony as a child? Tony tries to remind Junior of who he was and even who his brother was, but Junior has no clue who he is. Tony goes on to tell him that him and his father used to run all in North Jersey, this thing of ours, to which Junior simply smiles and replies, "Well, that's nice." A frustrated and visually saddened Tony finally understands that Junior's at an advanced stage of dementia, that no revenge he could take on Junior was worth it. So, murders ordered by Junior Soprano. Richard Dicky Moltisanti, murder ordered for mocking him after falling and breaking his hip at Buddha Bompancero's funeral. This was in December of 1972. Brendan Fallone, murder ordered for robbing his trucks and killing one of his drivers. This is in September of 1998. Russell Rusty Irish, murder ordered for selling drugs to old man Capri's teenage son, Dominic, October of 1998. Donald Donnie Paduna, murder ordered for making jokes about Tony's mother, wanting him killed, and thinking that he may joke about him as well. This is in March of 1999. Jimmy Altieri, murdered for being an FBI informant in April of 1999. Gennaro Little Pussy Malanga, murder ordered for informing against the crew in 1999 or 2000. Salvatore Mustang Sally Intile, murder ordered for being Vito Spatafore's brother Brian into a coma, October 6 of 2000. Real-life inspirations. The Junior Soprano character might have been loosely based on the real-life presumed boss of the Gambino crime family, Peter Gotti, and DeCavalcante crime family made man Joseph Sodano, and Joe Jacoby, with similarities in look, thick glasses, and in age, inheritance of the leadership from his nephew John A. Gotti, and his relationship with former girlfriend Marjorie Alexander. Another probable theory is that Junior was based on former DeCavalcante leader John Riggi. Both Soprano and Riggi were born in the 1920s, and both would go on to serve in the U.S. military in World War II. Both Junior and John Riggi were Italian-American mobsters with a strong presence in New Jersey. Soprano is depicted as an old-fashioned and stubborn boss, deeply involved with labor racketeering and other criminal activities. These traits are reminiscent of John Riggi, who was known for his traditional approach of mob leadership and his involvement in various illegal enterprises. They both lived long enough to bear witness to civil wars engulfed by members of each of their own respected same crime families. Junior briefly attempted to overcome Tony's mob presence in '99. Riggi's previous subordinates, Charlie Maggiore and Vinnie Palermo, were also rivals to each other. Each man at one point was diagnosed with cancer. Riggi was said to have suffered from prostate cancer, while Soprano endured but survived stomach cancer. Each had prison records and were eventually released to live out the remainder of their lives. Also, by their ends, Junior and John Riggi also often tended to their supervision of medical assistants. So here's a little bit of trivia. During his arrest in '99, it was stated that Junior was 70 years old, and this means that he was most likely born in 1929. Junior's murder of Dickie Moltisanti seems to have gone entirely unsuspected by both his brother and nephew for decades. Even by the end of the series, never once did Tony suspect Junior of having Dickie whacked. Prior to Junior's arrest in '99, he hadn't been arrested since 1968. According to Malovian, Junior Soprano was a veteran of the Second World War. Junior owned a black 1992 Lincoln Town Car, which appeared in seasons 1 through 5. Both his former deputies, Mikey Palmisi and Bobby Baccalieri, chauffeured him around in it. It was said to have been stolen in Newark, New Jersey, in season 5 of Where's Johnny? All right, so that is what we're going to talk. That is Junior Soprano. We are going to move on to Paulie Gualtieri. According to The Sopranos, a family history, Peter Paul Gualtieri, son of Gennaro Gualtieri, although Paulie's biological father was later revealed to be a World War II-era soldier named Russ, has been in trouble as a street kid from the age of 9. He dropped out of school after the 9th grade. He spent time in and out of juvenile correction facilities during his youth. When he was 17, he officially became an enforcer and a bodyguard for Johnny Boy Soprano, Tony's father and captain in the DiMeo crime family. His mother, later discovered to actually be his aunt, worked at Crespi's department store in Newark during Paulie's childhood and early adulthood, but has since retired. Paulie's grandfather, who immigrated to the United States in 1910, is from Ariano Irpino, a municipality in the province of Avellino in the Campania region of Italy. Paulie's grandfather and Tony's paternal grandparents were from the same province in Italy. Paulie would spend 4 years in the U.S. Army Signal Corps, where he was eventually drummed out, through Section 8, discharged for psychiatric reasons. Although Paulie did not have a long military career, he is still proud of it, and a few of the other characters in the series had military experience. Afterwards, he spent more time in and out of prison on various criminal charges. Eventually, he worked his way up through the DiMeo crime family, reaching the rank of captain in 2000, shortly after Tony Soprano became the boss in New Jersey. In 2006, Paulie was promoted to underboss, and Christopher Moltisanti was put in charge of Paulie's crew, which happened to be Tony's crew earlier in history. Paulie would get the name Paulie Walnuts due to hijacking a truck in the early 90s, which he believed to be filled with television sets, but only contained walnuts. Paulie is one of the most colorful characters, obviously, on the show, often talked about as a reputed psychopath with no hard feelings. Paulie is highly paranoid and often refers to the supernatural things that he experienced, like deja vu, seeing the Virgin Mary, and especially his constant fear of death, either natural or probable. Paulie, throughout the show, displayed kindness and loyalty, but usually cracks jokes. That's sort of his thing. However, despite his seniority, Paulie is one of the more eccentric of Tony's associates and arguably one of the most ruthless, as expressed by his paranoia, misophobia, competitiveness, miserly nature, impulsive violence, and often childlike dependence on Tony's approval. In season 1 of the finale, I Dream of Jeannie Cusimano, Tony tells his crew that he had been in therapy for almost a year when Paulie revealed that he too had seen a therapist from whom he learned some coping skills. Nevertheless, Paulie is recognized throughout the series as one of the top earners and one of Tony's most trustworthy friends in his inner circle of Paulie, Silvio Dante, and Christopher Moltisanti. Paulie, it was single in the show, as you know, had no children outside of marriage. Unlike most of the other mobsters, he shuns the married life. A girlfriend of Paulie's, played by Judy Reyes, is briefly seen in episode 2.9, season 2, episode 9, from Where to Eternity. In a rare moment, Paulie shows compassion for her 2 children, putting them back to bed, citing that he didn't want to keep everybody up. Ultimately, Paulie's psychosis, his girlfriend recommends a psychic, but the season ends with Paulie calling a group of a bunch of fucking queers after the psychic sees the spirit of Charles Sonny Pagano, the first guy Paulie ever whacked, together with other spirits, including Mikey Paul Misi, who supposedly tells the psychic to ask Paulie if the poison ivy, which he caught on his face while chasing Paul Misi through the woods, still itches. In season 1, Paulie was a central member of Tony's crew. He executed a Colombian drug dealer and stole a large quantity of drugs and cash from his hotel room. Other tasks that he did were retrieving a car for a teacher of Tony's son, torturing a hotel co-owner so that the crew could own 25% of that business, and extorting a soccer coach by giving him an unwanted free TV. When suspicions that Salvatore Big Pussy Bompancero was an informant, Paulie volunteered to investigate and murder if necessary. His method of taking Pussy to a bathhouse and trying to get him undressed for a steam bath lacked subtlety and drove Pussy into hiding. In Tony's brief and bloody war with Corrado Jr. Soprano's crew, following Jr.'s attempt on Tony's life, Paulie was assigned the hit on Jr.'s consigliere Mikey Paul Misi with assistance from Christopher Moltisanti. In season 2, when Tony becomes the street boss of the family while Jr. only remains boss in name, Paulie is promoted to capo of his old crew. This meant that Pussy, Christopher, and Furio Junta, amongst others, reported to him. To help set up the crew's stolen car distribution operation in the country, Paulie traveled with Tony and Christopher to Italy. Paulie also helped run the executive game, a high-stakes poker game. Now, if you go back to the car distribution thing that the Sopranos were doing in Italy, that should ebb and flow and remind you of Roy DiMeo, because that's what they were doing. It's very similar, and it's very obvious where David Chase took that from. So in the episode From Where to Eternity, while Christopher is in the hospital slowly recovering from a bullet wound caused by Matthew Bevilacqua in Sean Gismonte's failed assassination attempt, which was engaged to gain recognition in the DiMeo crime family, particularly with Richie Aprile, when Christopher becomes clinically dead for a few minutes after his heart stops while he's in a comatose state, he has what may have been a morphine-induced dream in which he visits purgatory and sees his deceased father, Richard Dickey Moltisanti, along with his deceased best friend, Brendan Falone, and Mikey Paul Misi, who had killed Brendan earlier in season 1. Ironically, Brendan and Mikey are good friends in the afterlife and even gamble together with ancient Roman soldiers against Irish gangsters who they constantly lose to, according to Christopher's description of what was going on in his ephemeral visit to the realm between heaven and hell. Christopher informs Tony and Paulie that Mikey had a message for them. 3 o'clock is what Mikey told Christopher to tell them. And it never actually revealed what this esoteric message was really supposed to mean, although Paulie thinks that it could have been around the time Mikey was executed. Christopher's spiritual experience, which Tony remains skeptical of, deems it just a dream, spooks Paulie immediately. Paulie subsequently begins to have disturbing nightmares of being dragged to hell. Paulie, at the recommendation of his Gumar, goes to see a medium, but to confirm for sure that the guy is real, Paulie gives a pseudo name when he calls out and makes an appointment. Much to Paulie's chagrin, the authenticity of the medium is confirmed when he begins communicating with Charles Sonny Pagano, who was the first person Paulie ever whacked back in the 60s, and also Mikey Paul Misi. It becomes abundantly clear that Mikey's spirit is present when the medium informs Paulie that he wants to know if the poison ivy still itches. That's still funny. Paulie flips out, grabs the medium, and asks who's he been talking to, and feels he somehow got some very clandestine information on Paulie through actually still living person. Paulie continues to remain spooked and paranoid because he feels like he's being haunted by Mikey Paul Misi, accompanied by others he had murdered throughout his criminal life. However, a skeptical Tony informs him that it means nothing. Later on in that season, when it was confirmed that Big Pussy was an FBI rat, Paulie accompanies Tony and Silvio Dante on their trip out to a boat to execute Pussy. Paulie, right before the execution is carried out, tells Pussy, "You were like a brother to me," at which point Tony adds, "to all of us." Paulie clearly has stated the hurtful impact of Pussy's betrayal, and seems to have put the experience behind him. Paulie also is later haunted by the memory of Big Pussy as well. So I'm not going to go through season 3. Let's see. Let me scan down here. I'm not going to go through everything. There's so much that Paulie Gualtieri was involved in because I've got like 6 or 7 pages of stuff. I'm going to just pass this. Okay. Let's jump to the episode The Ride. In The Ride, Paulie was responsible for organizing an annual festivities at the Feast of St. Elzir. And that basically was to mimic the Feast of St. Anthony here in New York City. Paul took over running the festival from Johnny Boy Soprano upon his death and continued to run it for profit. In 2006, it proved a burden because the replacement priest, Father Jose, tried to renegotiate the payment of the church would receive from the proceeds of the feast. Paulie refused to pay, and Father Jose retaliated by refusing to allow St. Elzir's gold hat to be used in the festival. The hat's absence was noted and complained about by elder residents. Ride maintenance was another issue where Paulie decided to save money, which resulted in the malfunction while Bobby Baccalieri's family was on a ride. Janice received minor neck injury. Subsequently, this resulted in temporary bad blood between Paulie and Bobby, which Tony ordered to be resolved. During the festival, Paulie was tested for prostate cancer because of an elevated prostate-specific antigen. With his uncertain parentage, there was no way of knowing if he was genetically predisposed to the disease or not. During a restless night awaiting a biopsy results, Paulie woke at 3 a.m. and went into the Bada Bing. There he had a striking vision of the Virgin Mary hovering over the stage. Paulie later visited Nucci at Green Grove, and they had a silent reconciliation. In the episode Mo and Joe, Paulie tells Tony that he'd been diagnosed with prostate cancer. The disease apparently was caught in an early stage, and Paulie underwent, of course, radiation therapy as a result. Paulie suggested that his luck at having been diagnosed early was a reward for his good deeds in life, and Tony agreed with him. He stated in the episode Stage 5 that he had beat the fucking cancer after learning of Johnny Sack's death from lung cancer. Let's see, I'm not going to talk about that. All right, so the Gualtieri crew. When given the control of the Soprano crew, Paulie oversaw all of Tony's old business dealings, which included, amongst others, the paving union, extorting drug dealers, the pump and dump scams, charging HMOs for fake MRI expenditures, fencing stolen goods, a phone card scam, gambling, loan sharking, and the crew's front businesses, Barone Sanitation, and Massarone Construction. Throughout the show's run and other aspects of the crew's criminal activities developed or revealed. These include control of the Joint Fitters Union, credit card hijacking run by Benny Fazio, the betting shop, cigarette smuggling, both run by Christopher, the protection rackets run by Patsy Parisi. Legit businesses included Pussy's Old Body Shop, now run by his wife Ange. Silent partner in a lawn care business in the Feast of St. Elisario. Paulie soon became Tony's biggest earner. However, by season 4, Paulie's businesses hit a low point, especially in comparison to the Cifaretto and Barisi crew. By season 5, Paulie's crew regained its position as one of the best earners in the family. When Paulie was promoted to underboss between season 5 and season 6, Christopher would then take over as captain of his old crew. So, these are the murders committed by Paulie Gualtieri. Charles Sonny Pagano, mid-1960s. And the episode is actually Made His Bones. He killed somebody named Gallegos in 99, shot in the head by Paulie. Mikey Grab. It just says Mikey Grab. Okay, so this was the guy in the Pine Barrens. In 99, executed in the woods by Paulie and Christopher. Big Pussy, 2000. Killed by Tony, Paulie, and Silvio. Valerie, 2001. Killed for attacking Paulie and Christopher. Min Matron, 2002, suffocated her with a pillow. Raoul the waiter, shot by Paulie after suffering blunt force trauma to the head from a brick. Colombian number 1, 2006, shot in the neck by Paulie. Colombian number 2, 2006, shot in the chest by Carrie DiBartolo and Paulie Gualtieri. Let's see. In the episode Commendatore, when Paulie still believed that Nucci is his mother, he mentions having 2 brothers. Only Jerry is mentioned by name in the series, and one of them is a doctor. In the series finale, Tony mentions a niece of Paulie's who has multiple sclerosis. Because it is now known that Paulie has no siblings, he is referring to one of his cousin's siblings' children. His surname is, you guys are going to love this, his surname is taken from the real-life DeCavalcante crime family mobster Frank Gualtieri, who served under Vinny Ocean Palermo. All right, so there you go with Paulie Gualtieri. I skipped about 6 pages of Paulie just because it was like highlights from different seasons. So we're now going to talk about Bobby Baccalieri. Bobby Baccalieri ran Junior Corrado's old loan shark business. Although not officially a captain, Bobby was a high-ranking soldier who ran Junior's interests as a high-acting captain and reported directly to Junior and later to his nephew, Tony Soprano. He eventually became the underboss of the Soprano crime family, only behind Silvio Dante and Tony Soprano. Bobby was the son of Robert Bobby Bacalieri Sr., a mob hitman. Tony referred to him as a real Terminator, indicating his extensive record of high mob killings, who fronted as a barber. Bobby's father returned from retirement for one last job before his death from lung cancer, which Bobby found quite distressing. And believe it or not, guys, that is one of my favorite episodes because Burt Young was in that series. I loved it. There's just something so hilarious about Burt Young walking up the stairs and putting two in the guy's head in the kitchen. That was one of my favorite hits, believe it or not. So before joining Junior Soprano's crew, Bobby was a head waiter at least until 1986 and was groomed by his father, Bobby Sr. At some point, Bobby becomes a made man, although without making his bones, and this may have been arranged by his father. Bobby was married to Karen Bacalieri until her death. They had two children, Bobby III and Sophia. Bobby was quite different from a lot of the other guys in the Soprano crime family. He was a quiet guy, shy, seemed kind of nice, even-keeled, even-tempered, and those traits made him well-liked, if not necessarily respected. Yes, we know he was a beast, which brought him a lot of ridicule and jokes, but he was loyal. He was, if you really think about it, go back to the show and watch it, he was probably the most loyal. Him and Paulie Gualtieri were the two most loyal guys on that show to Tony, truly. Bobby was always respectful and sometimes affectionate towards Tony, telling him, "I always liked you." In the aftermath of a feud that saw Tony order the deaths of several members of Junior's crew, with Bobby and Junior the sole survivors, he bore no lasting grudges against Paulie Gualtieri or Christopher Moltisanti, who carried out those hits and appeared briefly looking delighted the day Christopher was made. Bobby operated Junior's loan sharking business in his stead and also acted as Junior's assistant